Hey guys, so as it says in the description, how not to wobble. We're going to be flying out to Law 5 because it wobbles really badly. The majority of the planes that wobble really bad in this game seem to be, at least to me, they seem to be the really high roll rate planes, like the Law 5 and the Focke-Wulf 190s. Especially the doors. Wait, oh god. Wonderful start to this video we have today. Gonna get some altitude and speed. Thing up. Yep. 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 Look at it wiggle. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. And wiggle, 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 wiggle. This poor little plane. And look, it gets so much worse when you do this. Oh my goodness. Yep, you can make the plane do a barrel roll without even using the keys. So anyway, that's one of the real secrets to how not to wobble, is to use keyboard controls. Go away. It's we just leave it basic, somewhere around here. Should have checked this before. Oh yeah, pitch access. Yeah, so just ignore the joystick stuff. That's just my joystick stuff. But see, I personally have the roll access to A and D, and when you press A and D, it goes straight to the maximum and minimum values, meaning maximum is roll to the left, minimum is roll to the right. And then when you let go of the buttons, it goes back to 0. And then it just goes back to letting the mouse aim control everything. And then yaw access I have on Q1E, and then pitch access I have on W and S. Also page up and page down that I never pressed. I'm pretty sure that was the default. But that's just so that I just have the WASD and Q and E to do all of my magical rolling. Specifically the rudder, or not the rudder, the ailerons, which is the roll axis. Using the rudder is also nice in some situations, but for the most part it just it just gets you in trouble. So don't use the rudder too much. So there are a lot of different ways to do it. My personal favorite way of not wobbling like a Looney Tune is to use the roll myself, controlling the roll of the aircraft myself when I want to go turn to the left rather than just flying in level flight and say plane left, because it doesn't respond well when you just tell it what to do like that. Instead, I tell it exactly what to do. I want to go to the left. If I want to go to the left gently, just a gentle left turn, you can kind of get away with it if you move it slowly, but even moving it slowly, you still get some serious wiggle if you don't use keyboard controls at all. So what I do is, for a right-hand turn, I'll roll the plane to the right before I start turning, and then I start turning, and as I'm turning, I'm manually using the ailerons to try and keep the plane balanced. By which I mean, if I have it rolled down too much, you could basically just stare at the rudder of the aircraft as it's turning. You can see if the rudder is moving, the rudder is pretty much what causes the majority of the wobble, which means planes like the Hellcat that have really bad rudder authority at higher speeds tend not to wobble because the rudder doesn't do anything. But it's when the instructor starts playing around with the rudder, you start having problems. See, the rudder's not moving at all, nice smooth turn. If I aileron to get the plane a little less balanced, so then it has to use rudder, it starts wiggling around. So just watch the rudder of the plane. If, as you're turning, the rudder of the plane goes in the direction you're rolling, that means you're not rolled far enough in that direction. See how the plane's ruddering to the right while I'm turning to the right, and it makes it wobble? If we go to the left, and I do the same thing to the left, the plane isn't rolled enough, and it's trying to rudder to the left as I'm going to the left. That means you're not rolled far enough in that direction. And the other way, if you're rolled too much for your turning, you'll see you'll rudder in the opposite direction, which will also cause wobble. And that's because you're rolling the plane too far. What you want to do is, for however hard you're turning, you want to keep it so the rudder's perfectly in the middle and not wiggling around at all. And just by tapping the aileron keys to keep the plane rolled correctly. It takes quite a bit of practice, but I've gotten so good at it. That's the main reason you don't see my planes wobbling that much while I'm playing. Then occasionally, while I'm just climbing around or something, I'll just throw the plane over here, and then then it'll wobble like crazy. But that's my personal method. Another way you can do it is, while you're in a dogfight and you're doing hard maneuvers, is just using the W key to pitch up, and then using the ailerons to adjust the direction you want to pitch. You're pretty much not using the mouse aim at all. I mean, you can put the mouse aim wherever you want, and then when you let off W, the plane will try and turn itself in that direction and get all silly. But basically, the real trick to it is to not just use mouse aim and just tell the plane, I want to go over there. No, I want to go over there, because it gets all confused and it doesn't know what you want. Oh my goodness, it's the ground. Oh, it's the ground. Oh, it's the ground. Hello, ground. I had a video about you recently. So just, I know I'm making it sound a lot more complicated than it really is. Basically, just do everything you can to make sure the mouse aim doesn't do anything with your plane's rudder. It also, when people do aileron rolls, they often get mad when the plane spazzes out as it does the aileron roll, like that little derp, 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 and they don't understand why the plane just spazzes out as it's rolling, and I don't understand. The reason it does that is because planes actually aren't capable of doing a perfect on-axis roll. They actually have to do a little bit of a pitch movement with it, which means when you have mouse aim held straight like that, what you're really asking your plane to do is to fly perfectly straight forwards without dipping. And some planes, like the Law 5, actually do have the rudder authority to sort of do it. But when you roll your plane inverted, your aircraft doesn't actually have the negative elevator authority to keep the nose up. So the nose is going to dip, which means if you want to do a nice perfect roll without spazzing out, you're going to have to move where you're aiming the mouse, and you have to go in this little circle. And basically, because that's what planes actually do when they do barrel rolls, they don't. Well, it's not a barrel roll, it's just an aileron roll. But when you do an aileron roll, that's how aircraft actually do it. And as a result, you have to move the mouse aim in a little circle of where the nose of the plane would track during a normal barrel roll. Otherwise, you're going to get that wobble because you're asking the plane to do something planes aren't actually capable of doing. But when you move in a little circle like that, it's just nice and beautiful. And you'll notice, if you watch the aircraft's rudder, the rudder isn't doing anything. And that's what you really want to do. You want to keep your rudder from doing anything going left and right at all, which basically means just use mouse aim in the pitch axis. Don't actually use mouse aim for turning. How you should do turning is rolling the plane in the direction you want to turn and then use mouse aim in the pitch axis if you want to do a gentle turn. And if you want to do a hard turn, you might as well just use the keyboard. By holding down up on the elevator, the plane will just turn in whatever direction you pointed it in. And then you use aileron, or you can use rudder if you really want to roll the plane to adjust how you're turning. That's how I do the vast majority of my maneuvers when I'm in a tight, close-in dogfight. And during the gentler maneuvers, I'm using mouse aim to control the pitch rate, and I'm using aileron to stop the plane from wobbling by trying to keep the rudder from doing anything. Because you don't want the rudder doing things. And now, that was the not technical way of putting it. We'll be back to you in a second. Realistic controls, joystick. I'm flying on joystick. Oh god, I forgot how spastic this little plane is. So now that I'm flying on joystick, and we can see just how goofy this plane is, why do you not want to use rudder during any kind of maneuvers where you're expecting the plane not to wobble? Because when you get the pitch axis, this is how aircraft respond, and the pitch axis neutralizes the stick. That stabilizes out pretty quickly. It gets a little wobble, but the plane will stabilize pretty quickly, and if you think about it, it makes sense, because you do have this massive tail surface and the massive wing surface stabilizing it in the roll axis. You get something similar. The plane will stabilize very quickly with very little wobble in the roll axis because you have the entire surface area of the wings is being dragged sideways through the air when you roll. So it makes sense that it would stabilize out very quickly in the yaw axis. All you have to stop the plane from wobbling in the yaw axis is the vertical stabilizer, which is actually a rather small surface area, especially when compared to the rest of the tail, which means I'm literally just tapping the rudder and letting go, and that's what happens when you just tap the rudder. See how long it takes to stabilize out? Aircraft have very poor yaw stability, at least the majority of them, and at least almost all the World War II era aircraft do, which means when you get a wobble in the yaw axis, it takes a while for it to soften out. So if you think flying on joystick is just going to magically eliminate all of the wobble, it's wrong. You will still have that wobble if you use the elevator, or not the elevator, the rudder. So whenever you use the rudder, you're going to end up with this severe wobble, because that's what happens when you use rudder on aircraft, because they have so little yaw stability. Which means if you're flying on joystick, what you want to do to get nice smooth aiming is to not use the rudder, and to just use the ailerons, and then use the pitch to aim. Oh my god, I pulled the trigger and nothing happened, and then I flew it. So anyway, don't use rudder is basically what I'm saying. Try your best not to use rudder, And to do that with mouse aim, you really have to manually roll the plane yourself, or you have to move very slowly and get the plane to roll over before you try and pitch. If you try and just move over violently to the left, the plane's going to end up hammering the rudder and trying to pull you over with rudder. Because think about it, if you're flying straight ahead like this and you just suddenly ask the plane, turn to the left, it's not going to take the time to roll itself and then pitch to the left. Instead, it's just going to hammer left rudder to try and rotate the plane to the left. And whenever you hammer hard rudder, the plane wobbles, because that's what planes do when you hammer the rudder, so don't hammer the rudder. And in mouse aim, when you do just snap over to the side, what you're doing, you're asking the plane to hammer hard rudder. So don't do it. Be smooth and gentle with your controls, or do what I do and use keyboard controls instead. I could have just said that in the beginning and I wouldn't have had to have the whole long video, but there you go. That's my thoughts on the issue. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. Look at that big old engine.